Where it goes. Anybody have anything they'd like to talk about on discipline compared to today's school disciplines? That'll get the ball rolling.
Well, I started school in 1936 at Grove Street. And the only thing I really remember about the first grade was that I couldn't make A's. I still had trouble making an A, and the teacher at that time used to hit me in the knuckles with a pointer because I couldn't make my A's. The next year, she became a cloistered nun. I always felt that was just the place she should have been.
You sent her over the edge.
Richard, anything from Grove Street?
I've got a long story if you want to hear it.
Oh, yeah.
I actually concerns the library. Seems that when I was about the third grade, I went to Grove Street too. I had a book to bring back to the library. And I remember what it was Peter Rabbit, the red cloth cover book. My mother wrapped it in the back then during the Depression. He had bags he cut up, you know. Brown paper bags you don't get anymore. And they wrapped it all up and tied it with string. And we used to save all the string then. Everybody had a...
The ball.
Anyway, I think it was Mike Kelly's string. Mike Kelly had a meat market down next to Wall Street. Well, Criminal was next in the corner, and then it was next. And my father used to go down there and get all the meat there. And so anyway, she wrapped it all up with the string and all. And, my father was very friendly with Mike Kelly. Mike was a good friend of his. I remember going down there once in the old market, and they used to kid each other and argue a lot. My father watched Mike as he took some meat and put it on the scale, but he put a piece of heavy paper, wrapping paper, red waterproof wrapping paper, and then he put some wax paper, and then he put the meat down. And my father said to him, Mike, he said, how many pounds of paper do you think you sold for the price of the weight of steak? That was one of the oh. Anyway, I went down to school with my package. It was raining hard, and I carried it under my coat and went into school. And, where we had seats like that, sitting underneath there. And I was thinking about that. Well, we used to have to write with a scratchy old pen, and the ink that went in the inkwell. I remember that the teacher used to make it. She mixed it in the back. I don't know what iron grain, I don't know, and poured it with two each of those. And I thought afterwards, I said, you know, ink didn't cost much, but because everybody had to buy bottle ink for home. But I think that was, they were saving money for the taxpayers. Another thing they used to say with the taxpayers, after election, they come out with the ballots that hadn't been used, and the teacher would cut them up into 4 pieces with a paper cutter. We used those for several months, I guess. Some of them were blue and some of them were pink, and I thought it was a primary, the paper, the Democrats, Republicans. Anyway, after school, I remember the teachers I had, Miss Hammond and Miss McQuaid, Miss Green and Miss Rogan. Do you have any of them?
Well, I started with Miss Hamlin. That was the one teacher that became a cloistered
He was.
Then I had Miss McQuaid in the 2nd grade.
Yeah.
And then when I moved in the 4th grade, I went to Pleasant Street, and I had Miss McQuaid again in the 5th and 6th grade. And my 3rd grade teacher was Miriam Kelly at that time, mentioning Mike Kelly.
Yeah.
She taught 3rd grade.
Now, do You didn't have Miss Patrick?
No, I missed her.
Oh.
My first teacher I had at Pleasant Street was Miss Hastings,
Oh,
who of
yeah.
course is Jimmy Devereaux's mother.
Yes.
I had her in the 4th grade. Wonderful teacher, if
Yeah.
I remember correctly.
You know, I had gone to kindergarten. I had a Miss Ferguson, who was a lovely woman,
Mhm.
Ferguson. So I thought when I went to 1st grade, I'd have a nice, lovely 1st grade teacher, Miss Hamilton.
Yeah.
Scared of
That's
her.
the one.
You know, I think she became a nun. She
Close to none.
Yeah.
A good place for her.
That's what she should have started to me. Anyway, I left the school at 3 o'clock and closed, and took the shortcut down back of the grocery school with the ledges on.
Angel
And
saw me.
Angel Sawmill down there, and back to Cleveland Factory, which had been, Patsy Cleveland had bought it from Valley a few years before that, down the hill to the brook. And the brook is what drains Whittam. So at that time, it was open by the library. There were 2 walls that were built, and you had to jump them.
That's right.
And there wasn't any bridge across, and so I'm very good at jumping. I jumped it pretty good, but in doing so, I put my hands up there and my book went into the water. And I was heartsick. What am I going to do now? I got down in the brook there, and I got the fish it out, and it was soft and wet. I tried to break Mike Kelly's string with my hand, my foot in my hand, I couldn't break it. I luckily had a jackknife. Now everybody in school, every boy anyway, had a jackknife.
That's right.
I never thought I'd have a jackknife. And mine, in the wintertime, I used to wear high cuts with a little pocket on the side with a knife in it. So I took my knife out, and I got it cut. I was thinking also when I was going to tell this, that I always thought of, you know, we always had, boys were always fighting, fist fight, but they get a bloody nose and a black eye, but they never had a knife. Nobody ever thought of using a knife. Nobody ever thought of kicking. That was a no-no. But now you see them on television, they cringe, and I see everybody kicking each other. You go to court, class down, learn how to kick, defend yourself. Well, anyway, I got the thing all undone, and it was soft and wet all the way in, and I tried to wipe it off on my shirt, coat. The red came off on the thing, and I was all upset. All I could think of, a little kid like I was, is I had to pay for it. At the library, I had to pay for books off the damn. I did $3 or $4. I thought, I never saw that much money. I think I'd be paying $2 a week for the rest of my life. Anyway, I got to the library with a book, and Miss Hodgson was a librarian. She was very stern. I never saw her smile. But she was there at the desk, and I watched until she turned her back a little bit, and I slid the book on a table there, and I kind of turned around nonchalant and walked. Well, I didn't get more than 6 or 8 steps, and she said, "Mr. Green, come back here." So, oh dear, I'm in trouble now. I went back, and he said, "How'd you get the book all wet?" I said, "Well, it's raining now, it's raining." She looked at me, she didn't say anything for quite a while. She looked at me and said, "You dropped it in the brook, didn't you?" I just I did that too. She gave me a little lecture and told me how important books were and the value of them, and I didn't have to pay for it. But that was one of my poor days in school.
Mrs. Ferguson sort of reminds me of a story. When I started school, if you were fortunate enough or wealthy enough, Richard, to go to Mrs. Ferguson's, you would a lot of times skip first grade. And I remember my friend Scott Garrett should have been a year behind me, but he went to Mrs. Ferguson, so he met me in the 2nd grade. I went to the WPA kindergarten Kindergarten, of course, wasn't compulsory in those days, but my parents thought I should start my education. It was up on Maple Street, back of Maple Street School, there were two brick buildings, one being the junior high in those days, and the other one, I don't remember what was on the first floor, but the other building had a kindergarten conducted by one of Roosevelt's Make Work projects, the WPA. I can only remember 2 people in that class. I remember going to the WPA kindergarten. Bill Cody would pick me and his son Pete up in Bemis's oil truck. And we go up to the WPA kindergarten. The only other person I can remember in that class was Dottie St. Dennis, or Dottie Snow. And I don't remember ever learning an awful lot. I do remember that we used to pull each other around in corrugated boxes. And at 10 o'clock, we'd have saltines and a glass of tomato juice. And that's all I can remember about my kindergarten experience.
And you didn't learn to make A's.
I'm sorry?
And you didn't learn to make A's.
No, I did not, because I Miss Edmund tried the next year.
They didn't have Miss Kittle penmanship books in those days.
No.
Good. That's what you read.
Louise Ramsey, class of 46. Anything you'd like to reminisce about?
I've been just sitting trying to.
That you can
Don't
talk
tell
about.
anybody.
That you can talk about.
Well, I can always remember one beautiful day in the spring. We all went home to lunch, and then we came back, and Mary was one of 2 people that had a car in high school. And we're sitting in front of the school, and we're thinking, it's really too nice. And we decided we would just take off. So we went to Hot Dog Annie's, and we went to Marion Marola's house, and we took the afternoon off from school. Of course, we had sat out in front of the school until we decided to go. So the next day, we come back to school, and Mr. Agard calls us in, and it was during the war, and he told us that we had to go down, as our punishment, we had to go down to the town hall and pack clothes for people overseas. You know, now that was not no punishment. We had more fun doing that. But we all went home, we told our parents. We were seniors, it was the first time we'd ever skipped school, so we didn't think it was a mortal sin.
And we had fun.
Oh, we did.
Poor Rosita, though, her mother
Her mother wasn't as kind as ours.
Well, they called home for Rosita's mother, and so where is your, do you know where your daughter is? At school. Oh, she's not. Yes, she is. And then when she found out she wasn't, Rosita she got into more, well, I guess probably she was more serious about school than we were.
I don't know. I mean, I just figured one time in 12 years, you know.
We were due.
Yeah, we were due.
There weren't any other times.
No,
No.
never,
Never got in trouble in 12 years.
never. No, never got caught.
Never got caught.
We
What
got
about
caught.
the times you think you did?
We got
this?
caught that time.
But we were very smart.
Now, if Mary Dad was here, would I get any stories out of her concerning this? These 2
Not about
children
us.
in Maple
No,
Street,
not about
West
us.
Main Street.
Pleasant
Street.
Oh, Pleasant Street, that's right, forget about Pleasant
No,
Street being
every
there.
time Miss Madden sees me, she takes my face like that. She says, "You're still as cute as you always were."
Boy, she is doing remarkable.
She's a good, she was a nice teacher.
I was hoping she'd be here tonight.
She started, I didn't have the pleasure of having her, but she started to teach school the year I started school, 1936.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, a little story about Miss Madden. I had a cousin that was born here in Spencer, just went to the first grade in Spencer, and then his father died here when he was 5 years old. He stayed here till he was 7. He was bad asthmatic. went down south, never returned to Spencer until he was for our wedding, I guess, so that would have been, he would have been 18 years old at the time. Came to Spencer, he hitchhiked up here from Texas, and he said, you know, he said, there were two people I must see again in Spencer. One is Miss Madden, and the other one is Dr. Brown. He went down, Miss Madden by that time was at West Main, I believe, and he went down to West Main, and he walked, it was after school, and he walked into her room. She looked up and said, David, how you've changed. So then he went up to Dr. Brown, he walked into Dr. Brown's office, and he said, hi, doctor, you remember me? He says, well, before I tell you who you are, did I do a good job when you were, oh, I guess my cousin said, you brought me into the world. And he said, well, I don't know who the heck you are, that was it, but did I do a good job? And I thought that was so typical of Dr. Brown.
What were the class sizes like then? Were there 24, 26, 28?
Oh, I had like 46 in my class in Worcester, and there were 5 Pauls I can always remember.
And there were more than
In
one,
one class.
there was more than one class in
Yeah.
the room.
Oh, yeah, we
Six
had like
was saying,
first
right,
and
Pleasant
second,
Street,
first
yeah.
and second, third, one room.
Yeah.
No, we would have like 2-1, 2-2, 3-1, 3-2, like that.
No, I had Miss McQuaid 3 times. I had her in the 2nd grade at Grove Street, and I had her in the 5th and 6th at Pleasant Street.
I think she taught
I
the
had her
first
in
year when I went to girls. She was 2 years ahead of you.
Uh-huh.
That was the first year teaching. And she was very, not very knowledgeable about taking care of the kids. The kids would play tricks on her a lot. So she grew up a little bit on that.
Yeah.
But it was very nice.
Didn't she later become a professor at Plymouth State College in New Hampshire?
Well, I don't know.
Oh, that's what, I think she's still alive. The last I knew she was in Plymouth, New Hampshire. But I think she went on to get a PhD and became a professor at Plymouth State College. One of the King boys, I think, told me, Christopher King, I think, went to Plymouth State. She was up there.
Hey, you want us to tell, what are you gonna tell?
I never had a problem.
Just the teacher had a problem.
I faked being sick one time. My mother thought I had appendicitis, and I got in trouble for that. But just the little things that we do. Now, about the heating systems in the schools. When I went to Grove Street, now that was in the 50s, mid-50s, late 50s, they still had coal delivered. And Remy Dine used to go down and hang sheets up on coal delivery day. And we weren't allowed to go downstairs to use the restrooms. So they'd tell us, you know, go down and use them now because for 2 hours you can't. And you sit there in the classroom, you just see the black soot starting to come up around the floorboards and around the pipes. And that would be the coal delivery day.
Do you remember who the janitor was at Pleasant Street?
Mr. Girton was,
Still, Lemoyne.
but Mr. Girton was.
David Gert?
Yeah.
Gert's father?
Yeah.
And when we first went, we had an old man, remember Mr. Lemoyne?
I don't remember him. I remember Mr. Gert.
Mr. Girton.
They used to oil the floor in Grove Street when I
Oh,
went.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if you, after the order, if you fell with the white shirt on, it'd be all black on you.
Yeah, and that. Think of it. The smell now that was. Tell about the chalkboard.
Well, it used to be an honor if you were asked to go clap the erasers after school. Well, I had Marion Rogan for a teacher, and she looked out the window and I had the honor of clapping the erasers. And I found out that day you don't clap them on the bricks, you clap them together, sort of like in your hands. And I walked in and she asked to see the dust that I had on my hands from clapping the erasers. And when I put them out like that, I put my hand down and she decided it was a good time to warm her ruler up. And I learned after that that you do not hit the side of the building with the erasers. Thank you very much for that.
When I went up to junior high, before I got there, I had a bit of fear because I was told that you better measure up when you got up there or Mr. James Brogan
Oh,
would invite you out in the hall for a round or two. And I don't know if anybody ever went out for the round or two, but I do remember the Pelletier twins? Well, they had morning papers. And Mr. Brogan was our homeroom teacher, and they were always late to school. They never came together. One would always come first, and he always had the standard pitch. Why, good morning, Pelletier. A $1 a dollar, a 10 o'clock scholar. Now, which way is your brother coming to school? By way of Palmer, Ware, and West Warren? But I don't know what Mr. Brogan taught. Do you remember? He taught U.S. Army, I think, at the Plattsburgh maneuver. That's all.
We get him talking about that, he forget what he was teaching us. And he said, you're gonna be sorry, it was during the war.
Yeah.
You're gonna be sorry, because one day I'm not gonna be here, they're gonna call me back, and you'll be sorry then. Well, they never called him back.
Well, in spite of it all, the United States won World War II without Jimmy Brogan. I would take it a bit further after I got through school. When I got out of the Army, I went to Worcester to buy some clothes the day after I got out. I was still in uniform. I was a real fashion plate in those days because I went to Kennedy's and I bought 2 shoes, not one, exactly the same. They were gray. And I thought, well, I was used to brown from the Army. I ought to go buy a pair of brown shoes to go with the suit. So I went into Tom McCann, sat down, and who looks up at me? It wasn't Ernest Borgnine, it was Jimmy Brogan. He looked like Ernest Borgnine, and he said to me, "Sibbon." I said, "Mr. Brogan." He says, "Army, huh?" I said, "Yes." He says, "I always knew you'd amount to something. I didn't know if being a private first class amounted." But anyhow, I fit in. I amounted to something because I was in the Army, and I shook his hand and left. And I thought of it many times since. I should have really saluted him. He would have eaten it up.
He lived in Worcester, and he used to come get flowers from me afterwards. And,
Oh, did he?
yeah, I used to see him quite often. And I remember, you know, he was so strict and strong. And back then, you could do what you wanted with the kids. One of the boys was real terrible all the time. And I remember him taking him by his hair, pulling him right up out of his hair, and taking him out in the hall and bumping him against the wall. It was Scotty. Scotty comes back. Scotty comes back like this.
You know, we did go out in the hall with him. Who remembers? You would, Mary, the Kincaids.
Oh, yes.
Charlie Kincaid went out with him, and he was one tough individual. He went out with Mr. Brogan.
I'm trying to think, who was it he put down the stairs?
I don't know.
Somebody, when we were there, somebody, he pushed down the stairs because we had him up
Yeah.
on the second floor, right on the end room, and as you came out the stairs. And I think what happened was he went to grab the kid, and the kid went backwards down the stairs. That was not a happy thought.
But Marty, you were saying you had a nice story about Bill Anselm.
Oh, I can't tell it now. Not when Aaron told it.
Why not?
Nothing to do with school.
But it was funny.
Shut off the camera.
Okay.
No, not now.
Sounds like another night.
There must be a category for that, Marty.
What?
There must be a category for that. We'll have to figure one
Yeah,
out.
yeah. Nothing wrong, but,
No, we'll just have to figure a category for that one.
okay. Next meeting.
Next meeting, we'll get
Um,
miscellaneous.
And another teacher was strict, but I think I learned more from her was Rita Kelly.
Oh, she was the best. She was the best.
She always would lecture sometimes the boys would have to get out a little early to go to basketball, football, and they had. She lectured about school was more important than sports. Sports was secondary, everything. And it was during the war, and they were short on firemen. And so they had the senior, junior and senior boys were signed up for the fire department. Kids had a bad fire, needed more help. And several times we were called out. They'd ring the bell in the old fire station, not the whistle, but the bell. That meant we went. We'd jump out of the seats and run out, and she'd glare at us all.
Well, many years after, as I was out of school, I'd meet her on the street and I'd say, "Good morning, Miss Kelly," and she'd go, "Here comes," and I'd just go walking right by. As the years went on, she mellowed.
Well, it was after I had her in 67, or 66.
Teacher.
Did any of you take buses, or did you all live within the mile, 2 mile, 3 mile limit, whatever it was back then?
We took buses, and you know what they called them? You were on the barge.
On the barge?
I forgot that.
Yeah, because on your report card, sometimes you tardy due to barge.
I forgot that.
And you know, my kids thought that was the funniest thing ever. Barge, there's no water, you know, did you go on the river? Barges go in canals. What were you doing on a barge?
Oh, see, the buses were Kent Crimmins had the green Ford.
Yep.
Andrew Casavan had a red Diamond T.
Proctor had a
Red one,
yeah.
might have been a Diamond T also.
Yeah.
And then,
When it was bad in the wintertime, he'd bring a sleigh.
I don't
And
remember
we'd go
that.
on the sleigh. That was the neatest thing ever.
They didn't call it off the snow?
Yeah, and the last day of school, he always stopped at Frank Oldright's and bought us ice cream. And of course, I would get off the bus at Frank Oldright's, but I stayed on long enough to get the ice cream.
You're smart.
I guess there were just 3 buses though, weren't there? I can
Yeah, Crimmins went to Wire Village.
Yeah.
No, Taylor.
No.
Taylor.
Crimmins. Yeah, Tim Crimmins. Oh, Taylor, that's right.
Taylor was down in the South Spencer Park.
Yeah.
Taylor, and then Proctor did Northwest.
Northwest.
And Casavan did, what's now
Hillsborough.
North Spencer
Yeah.
Road,
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
came through that way.
yeah, I forgot about it.
But Crimmins' bus had just a plank down the middle. It didn't have seats like the other ones. It had canvas on the sides.
I don't remember that. It was already a green Ford when I...
And the seat, you had to straddle the seat when you went on Crimmins' bus, because it went to Wire Village, and I'd sometimes go to Wire Village.
Which one would you have taken where you were living? Did you take Crimmins?
I took Proctor's when I took a bus. Yeah. But I mean, if I wanted to go to my grandparents in Ware Village, I'd go on Crimmins' bus.
I used to go down, I used to play with Al Stebbins, so we used
Yeah.
to take Crimmins when I'd go there.
Yeah, that was quite, quite a ride.
I bet you didn't have to sign a pass like they would nowadays.
Heavens, no, I mean, you just grab a bus and go where you
Yeah.
wanted to go. It wasn't like, you know, you had to sign up and you couldn't possibly take another bus. We didn't have that problem.
Now, when we're mentioning the junior high, we might as well mention, if I had the will to knowledge, I would surely gain. Miss Silk.
Yes, and word for word and breath for breath, you just...
Everybody has to learn.
Bill Robertson was forever getting thrown out of Miss Silk's class. And I don't know if you remember the little telephones in the room where they could call the office. On his way out, he'd always pick up the telephone and say, "Hello, office." Roberts did.
So I think the most important person, person I respect the most is Irving A. Guy.
Oh, he was,
Yeah.
He was principal and superintendent of schools and everything. He'd take if a teacher was absent for sickness, he'd take the class right over and he wouldn't just say read something, he'd keep right on going with it.
Yeah.
He was the head of the sports department, out there playing baseball and everything with them.
And what did we call him?
Pardon?
What did we call him?
Great soul, John.
Yeah.
He always wore soft toe shoes so you wouldn't hear him down the aisle, so you...
But they squeaked.
You know, oh, shoot.
Well, he